And we're live on YouTube.
Miss B, I suspect there's probably going to be more people over here than YouTube. What do you think, babe?
Definitely.
Yeah, so probably just stay on here. If you don't mind.
Let's see. It says we've got an excellent connection. Okay, there it goes. There it goes.
Awesome, Miss B. Thanks, Isabella.
Okay, fantastic. And we're live on YouTube.
Everybody's loving
And
their
I
baby.
forgot to cut the mic, so ignore yours. But, alright.
Oh well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gothhenge Reacts. We are reacting to anti-trans propaganda once again. We are on episode 3 of a 5-part series. My name is Seven, like the number 7. My pronouns are she, her. And with me is my lovely wife, Lisa.
Like the vegetable, Lisa. Hand right here. Off
Lisa's
screen.
a vegetable?
No.
No.
Not that I know of. I'm just jealous.
That's so funny. That's going to be the meme from now on. You're going to pick a different, like a blank to do.
That was
every
what
time.
I'm gonna do, yep.
I love it. That's fantastic. So what we've got for you tonight is we've got Stand to Reason's Transgenderism, Truth and Compassion.
And you can already tell there's not a lot of truth involved if they're using the phrase transgenderism
Right.
without a healthy dose of air quotes. Even now, as I was saying it, I was air quoting. I don't know if you could hear the air quotes, but they were happening.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. Every time someone says it, it's just...
It's cringe.
It's very cringe. The first 2 episodes were going through the introduction of transgenderism,
And
if
setting
you will.
up a straw man for what transgenderism means.
And then the second episode was talking about how biblical scripture supposedly falsifies the pillars of transgenderism. And so this third episode of this training series, if you will, is going to tell us supposedly how science falsifies transgenderism. So I'm excited, I want to say, to give this a watch. What about you, Lisa?
I mean, excited in the sense that I think it's important, but I'm kind of bored. I think it's boring. It's repetitive. It's wrong. It's bad argumentation. It's not fact-based at all, and it's only worth the time because these are common arguments.
Yeah. So, well, let's hit play and see what we got.
Sure thing.
Does secular research support transgender theory? In this
Yes.
class, we'll look at what the science shows about the 2 pillars that support this ideology.
And these are 2 pillars that he came up with, by the way. These are not pillars that anybody else says support transgenderism or transgender theory or whatever. Like, he came up with 2 really weak pillars so he could knock them down and act like he's proven something.
Right.
Hate that style of argument.
What were those pillars again?
I suspect he's going to bring them up, but yeah, I was just wondering
Yeah.
the same thing.
I'm sure I'll bring them up again. And we've got this lovely.
I think one of
little
them was
intro
that
here.
there are more than 2 sexes, which we've already admitted. No, as a biological thing, no, there's multiple genders.
Although
Different
there
things.
is a vocal and somewhat influential minority of people who argue that sex is on a spectrum, that
No
is
one
not the
says
consensus.
sex is on a spectrum.
Right.
Gender is on a spectrum.
That's one. Yeah, that's one of the straw men.
He keeps
that puts
conflating
forward.
sex and gender.
He does. It kind of. He hammers that home because he doesn't really seem to understand the difference between.
And
the
because
two.
it's easier, because you can be like, well, there's definitively only male and female in terms of like chromosomes and genitals. Of course, we can argue that that's not entirely true
Right,
either.
'cause
but
intersex
it's much
people exist.
easier to say than, well, the gender thing, because gender changes based on the culture, the time period, and even who you're asking. Here in America, gender displays are different in white communities, black communities, Samoan communities. Gender has been different in America in the 80s, the 90s, the 1700s. It's not something that's cast in stone.
Right.
Researchers in the field. Rather, scientists teach that human beings come in only two sexes, male and female.
Is that what
There is
scientists
no third
teach?
sex. There is no spectrum
I'm sorry,
of
scientists
sexes.
teach what?
That human beings only come in two sexes, male and female.
I'm not entirely sure that that is what is taught. It's taught that there are two sexes, and most people are one or the other. But yeah, even with that, I don't know that his wording is exactly correct.
No, it's not.
But even if we allow that he's just talking about generally and not trying to get hyper specific and hand wave that across, okay, so what?
Yeah.
So what?
Now, we know there are only two sexes because there are only two kinds of gametes. Now, what is a gamete? Well, it is simply...
So wait a minute. So gender is gametes now?
Well, apparently, yeah.
So yeah, just because there are only two kinds of gametes doesn't mean there are only two genders. Like, that's not how any of this works.
Well, and again, he's conflating gender and sex. So even if we allow that he's right about sex, he still hasn't said anything about gender or transgender people, and there is no necessity. Like, there's no necessity that small gametes are produced by men and larger ones are produced by women. That's not how this works.
Right.
a reproductive cell. Sperm and eggs are gametes, and humans can only produce sperm or eggs.
And there are some humans that have never been able to produce either, so what the fuck are they?
Exactly. Yeah, it's trying to define a thing that includes everything you want to include and excludes everything you want to exclude.
Yeah, like the chair.
Like the chair analogy. Gender criticals try to do this all the time. They try to define man in a way that includes all cis men but excludes all trans men. They try to define woman in a way that includes all cis women but excludes all trans women. And so they'll try this argument that he's trying here, that you're a man if your body makes sperm and you're a woman if your body makes egg. But the problem with that is there are plenty of cis men out there who, for whatever reason, don't produce sperm. Or if you got into an accident, let's say, and lost your sperm producers, are you suddenly not a man anymore?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's not how any of that works.
Even gender essentialist people don't tend to say that, oh, they had a hysterectomy, so it's not a woman anymore. Or
Right.
he got cancer, he's not a man now.
Yeah.
So even they don't completely buy this argument. But again, they're setting this up because this is easier to illustrate and make it seem like they've torn down something about being transgender, when in reality they haven't. They could just as easily be telling us how to make an egg McMuffin because it has that little to do with being trans.
Absolutely.
Those humans that produce sperm are males. Those humans that produce eggs are females.
Yeah, we've already kind of debunked this one.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they're men or women necessarily.
Well, and not all males produce sperm. Not all females
yeah.
produce eggs. Even if you're talking
So
about
are you
strictly
not male or
biological.
are you not male then until you begin producing sperm?
Yeah.
I mean, because females, they're born with all their eggs. They're not ripe and mature, but so what? Male is something you achieve later in life, and you're just a non-gender until you're 11 or 12?
What you are is an agender potato.
I don't think he
There
believes in
is no
agender
other
potatoes.
possible gamete that can be produced. If there was a third
Okay.
gamete, maybe we could say there's a third sex. But there isn't. There are only two kinds of gametes, and that's why we know there are only two kinds of sexes.
Which again, even if we grant him that is true, which I'm not prepared to do, it says nothing about gender because
And
sex
says
and
nothing
gender are
about
different
being
things.
trans. Yeah, gender is an expression often tied to one sex, but not necessarily.
Yeah. So.
Just because someone is
What else
born
has
with
he
an
got?
inability to produce one of those
Oh,
gametes, it
here
does
we
not
go.
mean that they are a different sex, or that we reject the binary classification of sexes.
Why not?
For example,
Yeah.
humans are also classified as bipedal. That means that we walk on two legs.
Screw
If
you!
someone was born without a leg, or maybe lost a leg in an accident, that wouldn't mean that humans are not bipedal. We wouldn't all of a sudden suggest that humans are unipedal, or say that there is a spectrum of pedals, right? That's because an exception doesn't negate the entire classification system.
Doesn't necessarily.
Right. Well, and nobody is trying to say that a person who only has one leg isn't a human.
Yeah,
But-
they are trying to say that trans people are not legitimate.
Right.
No one's ever told me I'm not a legitimate human because I can't walk. I mean, arguably they have, but not in so many words. Like, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I know, they came for me right out the gate. I feel so attacked.
Now, transgender ideology.
You guys don't
advocates
even know what
love
it's
to
like,
talk about
Seven. You just don't
intersex
get
people.
it.
It's true.
To have
Yeah.
someone make a
You-
video attacking who you are.
Yeah, I could never
Sorry.
understand that.
This is evidence for the idea that sex is on a spectrum. Now, the term
Again,
intersex
we
is an
haven't
umbrella
said sex is on a spectrum.
Right.
But
Gender's
he keeps
on a
coming
spectrum.
back to that because he can make a good point that way and make being trans seem ridiculous. And I hate people that make these types of arguments. Set
Yeah,
up a straw
absolutely.
man just to tear it down to try to make their point look better. That's why we're coming for him and his video and not just setting up a straw man for what Christians believe.
Yeah.
Or this sect of Christians. I'm not
Right.
again, impugning all Christians. I don't think most of you are nearly that ignorant and hateful.
Exactly. Yeah. This isn't definitive of all Christians, but this is absolutely a Christian website that we're looking at.
Yeah, it is. It's intended for Christians and a very specific sect of Christians even within that.
Right.
Term that refers to people with variations in their sexual or reproductive anatomy.
I mean, I
For
agree with
example,
that definition.
males typically
Yeah,
have
I mean,
an
to
X
find
and
enough
Y
definition.
chromosome.
Again, yeah,
Females
that's
have
typically
two
true.
X chromosomes.
Typically
Usually.
true.
Sometimes, however, a male is born with an extra copy of the X chromosome. So they end up as XXY, a condition called Klinefelter syndrome. Now, men with this condition have a variety of characteristics like low sperm count, weak bones, decreased
And
facial
this
and
has
body
what
hair.
to do with
Yeah, we don't
What?
care. Like, thanks for going into defining Klinefelter syndrome for us, my guy, but this has literally nothing to do with your argument. He's just...
yeah, it has nothing to do with being trans, but it makes
No.
it seem like he's bringing up scientific thing. He addressed this argument.
He's just gish galloping.
Exactly.
Do we not have a dog wrangler anymore?
I believe the dog wrangler took dogs outside. That's why some of them are barking more.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
All right,
Dog
we're
wrangler
back.
back.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, they get louder when you take someone for a walk.
Should I close the door, baby?
It was sort of, well, basically, I took Katie out. I was about to take them out, but Sky had Pete.
We'll
And
talk
Kate
about it
was
later.
about to take Pete, and she was barking at everyone.
Okay.
So that's why I took her in early.
Okay, well, we'll talk about it later, honey. We're trying to do the video. But yeah, if you could just try to keep them quiet.
That would be rad.
They say give on yourself.
Okay, so onward.
All right, so yeah, we're on to Klinefelter syndrome for some reason.
And enlarged breast tissue. However, these people are still male, and their chromosomal anomaly doesn't make them any less male. Sometimes a female is missing an X chromosome, and this is called Turner syndrome.
There have been women that have been born and given birth to children with an XY chromosome.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Just worth saying. But again, that's not really related to the point at hand. But as we've seen in the other videos, he doesn't really address the point at hand for most of the video.
Yeah, he's beating around the bush something fierce.
Yeah.
If he beats around the bush too much, it'll catch on fire. Then maybe God will speak to us through it.
That'd be hot.
Yeah.
develop a variety of problems like short height.
Again,
Which,
there are
again-
problems and defects. So
This
what,
has-
is he trying to
This has
tie
literally
not
nothing to do with
neatly
anything.
fitting into the sex binary as being problematic? I mean, there are problems associated with it often, but yeah, I can't figure out what he's going for.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just like the last one. He's like trying to put this in. Oh, look how sciencey I am. Yeah, look how much I know about stuff to add weight to his argument here.
Things. But women with Turner syndrome are still women. They're known as female just because of their chromosomal anomaly. And there are many other intersex conditions, but in these cases, we can still determine whether a person is male or female.
How?
Now,
And in some
How?
cases, no, it's not really that easy to tell. And yeah, I mean, in those two specific cases, I believe the
Sure.
genital expression appears consistent with what one would expect.
Yeah,
Is what he's saying.
but
there are
ambiguous
plenty of which
genitalia
it's
definitely
not.
exist.
Yeah,
You
there
know?
are plenty of people for whom it doesn't.
So he just kind of hand waves away all intersex people
yeah,
that don't
he
fit
only
into one of
brings
the
up the
three
intersex
that.
people that absolutely fall within the. Well, you can still tell if it's a man or a woman.
How? Because he's got a pee-pee.
That's exactly where he's going. With
That's
that.
basically it. They just have never progressed past the toddler knowledge of boys have pee-pee, girls have VV.
Yeah, and
Like-
that's so ignorant. And furthermore,
Fair.
what does it affect him if anyone identifies as one or the other or neither? It doesn't. He may think it does because he's selfish and has a bad case of main character syndrome, but it doesn't.
Bingo.
there are some situations where a child is born with ambiguous genitalia.
Okay, it's going to
In
bring
other
up
words,
ambiguous
it's
genitalia.
not immediately clear whether the newborn is a boy or a girl. Now, this represents a very rare condition, and according to Interact, which is an advocacy group for intersex youth, this only occurs in 0.05% of babies. In those cases, though, a specialist is called in to run tests, and they can still determine the newborn's sex.
So, what tests are they doing to determine the
And maybe
newborn's sex?
chromosomal or genital or whatever.
They've determined that the newborn's sex is intersex. I don't know. I don't know too much about this particular topic, but
Oftentimes it's these days determined with a genetic test, and it's ruled on chromosomally. Sometimes, depending if they're going to do a surgery, they may pick the one that is closest and easiest for a surgical reconstruction. But yeah, there's a number of different ways that they may choose what to go by these days. But fact of the matter is, it does, in these cases, come back to biology-based, either what they look like or chromosomally. Though sometimes it may be more chromosomally aligned with what we'd expect from a male, and the anatomy present is much more in line with what we would expect from a female. So it'd just be head wave, whoosh, it's a girl. Which
Yeah.
again, I don't think is appropriate either.
I don't
Those
either.
children should be able to make their own choice.
right, absolutely. Like the same people that are all up in arms over these supposed surgeries that are happening on trans youth are totally fine with these ambiguous genitalia being corrected in infancy, which to me is way more barbaric. I mean,
Yeah.
look at what was his name? David, as nature made him.
Yeah, David Reimer.
Who he had an issue with his genitalia as a child.
He was born male, and as was his twin brother. They did a circumcision, took off too much tissue, and he wasn't really going to have a penis. So they decided to completely remove his penis and tell him he was a girl, and do the same hormonal treatments they would have given today for like a child who actually is trans. The problem is David never identified as a girl and revolted against being called a girl, and eventually the secret came out. Because there's something there. You can't just make someone a girl or a boy.
Right.
And some people try to say, well, that's proof that trans can't happen. But no.
It's proof that trans absolutely does fucking happen.
Because it's not how you were raised or the genitals that you have that define
It's something inside you.
It's something else. And we don't know what that something else is, but clearly it's there.
It's a durable psychological construct. It's a part of your brain. It's a part of your psyche. There's a part of his, too. You know?
Exactly, yeah.
So you can't just say, oh, you're going to be a girl now, and have him accept that. It's part of why I get so frustrated when I hear arguments about, oh, I don't want my children exposed to this, because what if they catch the trans? I'm like, that's not how that works at all.
Yeah. It's like...
I literally heard that argument earlier today.
Children aren't gay at a greater rate now than they used to be because they're aware of being gay as a thing.
Yeah.
There may be people that are expressing it more freely.
Right.
But, like, there hasn't been a massive uptick in number of like, people who identify as gay or straight.
So glad you have a good puppy right now.
Quiet, boys.
Hang on a second, guys.
Yeah, she's going to check on the puppies. We'll be right back. But yeah, thanks, guys, for the gifts and stuff. Hey, quiet. Hey. Hey. Thank you.
Good.
Quiet, boys. Sorry, sometimes they get a little bit crazy. They're just toddler boys. Exactly. I don't like when parents treat their kids like property. Absolutely. Oh, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I think she's pretty too. I'm over here on camera. I'm her wife. Anyway.
I think we can probably cut those parts out of the YouTube.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that later.
I mean, if we can cut it out, we can talk about it now. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. I was just going to say we may as well.
Alright, so where were we?
We're about to react to him.
Okay.
Some more.
What's important to understand is that intersex conditions are not evidence of the sex spectrum.
Again, no one's necessarily tried to use that, and that has nothing to do with the gender spectrum. And again, with his like practiced hand movements, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Then again, like everything he does grates on me. You know, like how when you get somebody that you dislike so much, even the sound of them breathing makes you furious.
I can think of a few people like that. Yeah.
He's one of. He's getting to be one of them for me.
He's pretty freaking bad.
Rather, they represent variations within the sexual binary.
Within,
right? And female.
His
and if
exaggerated
there are
hand movements are
variations
so
within
wild.
sex expression that your God made, like humans had no role in that, then why can't there be variations in gender expression?
There's variations in literally everything else.
I mean, yeah. There isn't hot or cold. There's temperature scale.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the vast majority of intersex individuals do not identify as transgender, but rather identify with the sex represented by their biology.
I mean, good for them.
Yeah, I mean that's great for the people it's great for.
Yeah. I'm happy for cis people. I legitimately am. I'm glad that you identify with the sex you were assigned at birth. That's got to make life a lot easier for you.
But he's kind of arguing it backwards. Like, he's trying to... I don't know, like, the existent, like... I don't know. I'm trying to think of... I can't think of a good way to say it. Never mind. I'll say it later. Okay. But, like, he's trying to argue that... he's trying to argue, like, that the existence of so many... cis people somehow disproves or negates the trans idea. It's like, no. Like, just because most people can walk doesn't mean that there are people who can't walk.
Right.
No, sir. Not the courts. You don't need to eat coke.
They're being such hoodlums tonight.
They are.
Tonight of all nights. Alright.
Exactly. Who would want to be trans on purpose? Like,
yeah.
There are other ways to I've heard it said you want to get attention or feel special. There are other ways to feel special and get attention. They're so much easier, cheaper, and less damaging.
No. And as I've said before, I just... want to be free to live my life and to be who I am and to be comfortable in my own skin.
And we want that for everybody.
Yeah, and, you know, that ability is being taken away.
Yep.
For example, by the chromosomes and sexual or reproductive anatomy. So I've shown
here's the pillars.
Yeah, the sex spectrum.
Here's the pillars. The
which
sex
we
spectrum
said is stupid.
and gender identity. Those are the pillars.
I mean, gender identity is definitely one of the parts of being transgender.
Right.
I bet the way he's gonna. I mean, I know for a fact the way he's gonna explain it is gonna be piss poor.
Oh, yeah.
But look, he totally broke across that one important pillar. He's halfway to destroying transgenderism.
He's about to. You want to watch him do it?
Oh yeah, he's gonna cut it in
Science
half.
falsifies the first pillar of the sex.
Boom!
Boom! Right
There it
now.
goes.
Turn to the second pillar of gender identity.
Aw, there went our first pillar, guys. What are we gonna
Aw. And I seem to recall we pretty much agreed with his idea of how he puts gender identity, internal perception of whether you believe yourself to be a man, woman, or something else. I mean, the wording could be better because you can tell he's trying to. It's just internal, so it's not as important as external, and it's about whether you believe. And it's like, okay, well, why wouldn't you believing something internally be really important? I believe internally that I hate the taste of mint chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need anything more than that. We don't need a chromosome test to verify that or some external factor.
Yeah. And based on that belief, you avoid eating mint chocolate ice cream.
Exactly. I don't try to make it illegal and tax mint and chocolate chips to make it hard to get it. And again, according to transgender ideology, which again is phrased in a very sus way,
Oh, yeah.
your gender identity can differ from your biological sex. Totally agree. So he's not even wrong here.
Yeah,
He's
no,
being an asshole about it, but he's not wrong.
yeah, his definition of gender identity is just fine.
Identity is an internal perception of whether you believe yourself to be a man, a woman, or something else. And according to transgender ideology, your gender identity can differ from your biological sex. For example,
I mean, I'm living proof.
you can be biologically male, but have a female gender identity.
You like how he did that there? A female gender identity.
Yeah.
Behold
man.
my female gender identity.
Well, see, you have to shake your hands like that because, I mean, women's is crazy. Am I right or am I right?
I mean, we sure
Crazy
are.
ladies.
We sure are.
Seems like they're getting ready for a nap. You think
They might be. Well, they're being quiet right now.
Yeah, I think they're good. I think they're chill right now. I mean, knock on wood. Oh, of course, as soon as I say that, one of them starts running. But
Now, someone who experiences that kind of incongruence might say, I feel like a woman trapped in a man's body.
we might say that to get you people to fucking understand what gender dysphoria is like. But no, that's not really what's happening. Everybody knows that. It's just an analogy. It's
Yeah, do you not get analogies? That would be like saying, here are two pillars of transgender ideology. That
There are
would
no
make
such
sense,
pillars.
Because there aren't pillars. There
Right.
isn't a big sign said transgenderism that's held up by these two pillars.
That's right.
I want to make one now.
We should make one now,
But,
yeah. A literal sign with literal pillars. But, like, it's one of the ways we can describe it.
Okay,
Because,
going for the straw man, too.
yeah.
And
'cause-
he's really playing down the importance of someone's thoughts, feelings, and internal perceptions. He's trying to make it be like, oh, well, that's just what you feel. And I've been in churches forever. They really talk down and try to tell you, like, what you feel isn't important.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not that they've ever come with facts either, but still, they really denigrate the idea that what you feel should be important at all or meaningful at all.
That's not going to cause psychological damage.
I mean, you've heard my stories.
Yeah.
And I hope you can imagine that if you experience that type of incongruence, that could lead to gender dysphoria and severe psychological and emotional distress.
It sure can.
And that's why it's no surprise that 42% of transgender people attempt to commit suicide.
That's because of
That's
people
compared to
like
just
you,
1.6% of
asshole.
the general population.
Yeah. I mean, if we get appropriate gender-affirming care, that rate goes down significantly. It's still higher than the general population, again, because we're still struggling to gain social acceptance. Because of, people in our TikTok chat who are coming in and misgendering me and being dickheads.
Yeah, and it's the idea that so many of these people are disowned by their family and friends. You can't turn on the news media without somebody comparing it to a severe mental illness and saying they're deranged and terrible people, and the lack of support, the lack of resources, the way that getting appropriate surgeries and treatments isn't easy to do because they aren't covered by insurances or state coverage. All of these things are why transgender people have a higher suicide rate. I would put money on there being a far lower trans suicide rate in countries where things aren't so fucked up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it'd go to baseline because there isn't anywhere where it's exactly the same as a cis experience.
Sure.
But
yeah, I'd be curious to look up those numbers, but I'm sure you're right.
You see, transgender people are deeply hurting inside, and they desperately need our love, our care, and our compassion.
they're not hurting
That's
inside because they're trans. The idea is they're hurting inside and they're searching for anything to fill that void when really all they need is God. They're so desperate they're throwing gender at it. They might even try to be queer, and it's just not going to work because it's a God-shaped hole. It's shaped like a gaping, puckered, ripped open hole.
Right. I was going to say that's one of the first things. It was one of the things that I agree with. Gender dysphoria hurts a lot. Like, a lot.
Okay, but I'm coming at this from, as a Christian, he's talking about hurting inside. The kind of hurt that you try to fill with sex and drinking and women, and that's where he's going. It's not that gender dysphoria hurts. It's that you are hurting because you don't believe in God, you don't have God in your life, and you're just throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks.
Right.
And that's a different thing. You're not hurting because gender dysphoria sucks. You have gender dysphoria because you're so desperate to fix yourself without involving God.
I see. Well, I'm glad he has all the answers.
The concept of gender identity, however, is pseudoscience. In other words, transgender advocates purported to be scientific, but it's not. Many scientists point out that gender identity is not testable, it's not measurable, and it's not quantifiable.
Neither is pain.
Yeah, I mean, not really. Sure, there's like a pain scale, but it's not a good scale.
Just like gender, pain is based on the patient's self-report. And just like gender, there are external signs of pain. Like, if someone's in pain, you can usually tell. If
They're not just saying that like, today I'm feeling good.
Right, exactly. And if somebody's, faking it, you can usually tell.
Yeah.
Similarly, there were signs. Like, before I came out to you, you could freaking tell.
I had some inklings going on for years.
Yeah. Like, gender is a psychological construct. Gender identity is an internal thing, but it manifests itself in external ways. But it all starts with a person's self-report. And that is valid regardless of what anyone says.
And the only way to detect it or determine what it is to ask for a person's self-report.
Yeah, and doctors do that all the fucking time. That's how lots of diagnoses are made. I don't know why all of a sudden with the trans stuff, he's throwing self-report out the window.
Now, historically, if someone experienced an incongruence between their gender identity and their biological sex, then the solution was to treat them psychologically. In other words, a therapist would help the patient change their gender identity to help it make it match up with their biology.
But that doesn't work. That's conversion therapy, and that is torture.
Oh, and just for the new people then, yeah, so what we're doing is we're reviewing anti-trans arguments. This particular guy is coming at it from a fundamentalist Christian perspective, and we're breaking down why his arguments are bad. We don't support what he's saying. We're very much pro-trans rights.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't get it twisted. And we do not agree with what this man is saying. We're doing this because these are very common arguments that a lot of people make against trans people, and we're trying to give people the tools to disarm those arguments and help other people understand where trans people are coming from and why this way of thinking is both wrong and dangerous.
Well said.
Anyway.
Wasn't that well said, Zoe?
Had a kind of poetry to it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Today, however, we change a person's biology to make it match their gender identity.
And that's working a lot better according to clinical data and according to literally every major medical organization on the planet.
Yeah, pretty much the only ones that don't agree with it are those that started off trying to prove that being transgender is wrong and bad.
And that's presuppositionalist, and we don't like that.
Yeah, the way science is supposed to go is you start off with a problem, and then you work towards a solution. They're doing it backwards. They're proposing being trans is bad, and then they're going to go through and pick at everything they think they can find to try to prove that being trans is bad and wrong.
Right.
And this is
the
why
beginning with the end in mind.
There aren't major health organizations that sign on to anti-trans philosophy. Not one of the major world health organizations has. Not the American Academy of Pediatrics, not the American Psychological Association, not the World Health Organization. None of them. American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, all of them have agreed that therapy for trans people is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know, I wish I had started sooner.
And just because a country is ending gender-affirming care for children doesn't mean it's bad. A lot of times these things are based on politicians, and they're not always very educated. Kind of like how abortion care is not bad or dangerous, and you can't use the fact that Roe v. Wade was ended in America as some kind of proof for that.
Yeah. It's proof of nothing other than that we're backsliding.
Gender-affirming care for minors has become a very heated topic by a lot of people that don't even understand what it means by that.
The same type of people who would be all up in arms if the government was trying to get in the way of them and their doctors and their children.
Yeah, but it's like, it's not like you have a 5-year-old that's just like, I wonder what it would like to be a girl, and they were born a boy, and then you take them and immediately get them gender reassignment surgery. It's like, no, you start with social transition, if it even gets that far. And there's therapy and talking. There may be puberty blockers, which are reversible and just delay puberty. And then you might get gender therapy. But in terms of like surgeries and stuff, this is not happening really at all for children under 18. There may be edge cases, but that's for, I think, doctors, patients, and parents to decide. Sorry, I saw that. I had to say something. Anyway.
No, yeah, you're good. You're good. And it's, again, less that the doctors in England are ending gender-affirming care and more so that the politicians in England, the ones without the MDs, are ending it.
This is consistent with the standards of care set by WPATH, which is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And according to their most recent guidelines, the first step is to encourage social transition.
Yeah, that's a great first step.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he's going over WPATH. This is good stuff.
Yep.
Which entails changing your name and changing your pronouns.
And your appearance, clothing, makeup, hair.
Yeah.
Easy to reverse things if you change your mind.
Right, exactly.
And that's where most children stay. Because it's not really needed to go further than that for children, especially prepubescent ones.
Exactly. You don't want to just dive in head first and be like, you know what, I feel like a woman, let's go get bottom surgery. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? Transition is a long process. And yeah, you start with the easiest least expensive, most reversible things first, right?
Second stage is hormonal transition, which entails cross-sex hormones, or if you're prepubescent, then you get puberty-blocking hormones to give you time to decide whether you want to become a boy or a girl. And the third stage is surgical transition, which entails amputation of sex organs or the construction of new parts.
Oh Lord,
not
the way he says amputation.
And if you talk to a trans person who's wanted to go through surgical transition, they don't feel that it's some kind of amputate. I mean, I guess technically by the literal word, but they don't feel like it's somehow maiming or disfiguring
No,
them.
God, no. I don't know, and it's really hard, next to impossible, to explain gender dysphoria in a way that, can be understood by someone who hasn't gone through it. But it's kind of like if you had, an extra arm coming out of your shoulder. So instead of having just the one arm and the one shoulder, you've got another arm just hanging out there, and it hurts you on the daily. Like, it feels bad, right? You've got pain shooting through that arm, and you don't like that it's there, and you feel like it shouldn't be there. And you would want to get it removed. You would want to get surgically removed. Amputated, according to this guy.
I mean, technically it would be an amputation, but yeah, the way he's saying it has a very loaded
Yeah, it's very
thing.
loaded.
And one of the time you've finally gotten to surgical transition, even as an adult, you've been living as your preferred gender for years. You've had to get notes signed off by a number of doctors and therapists. You can't just show up at a hospital and be like, hey, trans my gender, and then get the surgery. This is something that you've got to think about and plan and work towards for several years at the very least.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's sure as hell not something that's happening to children.
No.
And I don't think most people even support doing the surgical transition for children. Very young children, perhaps older teens in certain cases, sure. But obviously nobody's wanting to rush children into a situation or force them to be stuck as the wrong gender either way.
Right, exactly. So that's why the guidelines were created the way they were by doctors.
Now, surgical transition is euphemistically called gender-affirming surgery by
It's not a
transgender
euphemism, sir.
Euphemistically.
A euphemism
Yeah, no.
is calling someone a patootie when you mean flaming asshole.
This guy's such a patootie.
Just a patootie.
But I hope you realize that it is tantamount to mutilation.
No.
It is not.
Mutilation is forcing...
Oh my God.
It's not mutilation. That'd be like calling every surgical procedure mutilation. That's overstated, melodramatic, and furthermore, even if it were mutilation, why do you care what someone else does with their genitals? Why are you so heated?
Why don't we ask the people who have had it done whether they consider it to be a mutilation? Because when you do that, you find out that the regret rate for bottom surgery is about 1%.
Far less than the regret rate for a hip or knee transplant, and I bet most of us know at least one older person that has at least one of those.
So 99% of people...
And those are still recommended. You don't see Christians going on and advocating that we shouldn't do the mutilating surgery of joint transplants because some people regret them.
Right? So 99% of people who've had bottom surgery are happy with the results. I mean, that tells you something. That maybe WPATH's onto something. Maybe they created the guidelines in a good
Yeah,
way.
they probably studied it and know more about it than you do, and the patients who live it know more about it than you do. I wonder how many trans people he consulted for this.
I have a guess. Probably not.
Probably none. I mean, he does not even flouting that he spoke to a detransitioner. And there are people who do detransition for a variety of reasons.
Generally
Many
social
of them
pressure.
seem social pressure.
Yeah.
But even still, 1% or so of people regretting something doesn't mean that it's bad, dangerous, or wrong for other people.
Exactly.
It just means to proceed with caution, which is already baked into the process with all of the, psychologists and people that you need to talk to get to the point of having your mutilating surgery. That was big air quotes in case you couldn't.
Genuine healthcare attempts to restore the body or organs back to their original design and function.
No, not necessarily. What about all the people who have had their appendices out or their tonsils out, right?
Yeah.
It's not about restoring anything. It's about improving the patient's quality of life. He's completely misrepresenting the goal of healthcare right here.
Gender-affirming surgery amputates perfectly healthy sex organs.
Just because it's healthy doesn't mean that it's wanted. Just like that extra arm could be
it's a
healthy
perfectly healthy
tissue.
arm. Yeah.
Wisdom teeth. I've had perfectly healthy wisdom teeth removed.
There you go.
I mean, they were growing the wrong way and were going to cause really severe problems, but they were healthy
They
teeth.
were perfectly healthy.
Perfectly formed.
And you mutilated them.
Just where God intended for them to be. As part of intelligent design.
There goes that cough again. I thought it was over it.
Solving an incongruence between your gender identity and your biological sex by changing your body to make it match your gender identity is unscientific.
No,
for
it's
several
not.
reasons.
Well, let's see what the reasons are, but, most of the scientists and doctors that I've talked to disagree with you on that.
Yeah, exactly. He just desperately wants to be able to back it and use science because most of the attacks for these arguments come from a scientific place. So he wants to be like, wait, no, we got science? No, we got the science! You can't say we're unscientific! We got science!
First, it's very difficult to be mistaken about your biological sex. But you can easily be mistaken about your gender identity.
Prove it.
Bullshit.
Prove it.
I call bullshit on that.
Show me someone that's mistaken. Is he going to walk up to a cishet man and be like, you're mistaken, you're really a woman?
Right. Like, again, we've touched on this point before, but you've got 1% of people who are trans, and of those trans people who transition, you've got 1% who detransition. And of those detransitioners, about 60% of them detransition due to social pressure.
And often
which
end
means,
up retransitioning, incidentally.
Right, which means that only 40% of detransitioners were mistaken about their gender identity. So that's 40% of 1% of 1%. That's like 0.00004%. That doesn't sound like it's very easily mistaken to me.
Exactly. It's not like... And this is the same mistake that you keep living for years. Because even if you fast-track surgery, you're going to have to be making that mistake very seriously for a couple of years.
And detransitioning is when you transition and then you reverse it. So in my case, for example, I was diagnosed male at birth, as we like to say, assigned male at birth in the common parlance. And I knew from a very early age that I was a girl.
Yeah, by the age of 3, she started telling people who don't believe in being trans, by the way, so they're not just reaffirming her or something. She began telling people that she was a girl.
But for a variety of reasons, I didn't start transitioning until I was about 41 years old. Now, I've started my transition now. If I came out later and was like, you know what, I was wrong, I want to go back to being a man again, that would be detransitioning. That's vocab term explanation there.
And again, people who regret something in and of themselves are not proof that the thing is bad, wrong, or not a good fit for most other people. Because you're looking at 99% of people who transition that are perfectly happy and satisfied with themselves.
Exactly.
Think about it.
Okay, let's think about it.
In 99.9% of cases, a person's biology is obvious. And it's almost impossible to imagine how someone can be mistaken.
He just pulled that number out of his ass.
Yeah, he totally did.
Like, I can show you some pictures of some absolutely beautiful androgynous people, and you're just like, boy, girl?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Like,
it's like one of those pictures. Is it a duck or a rabbit?
Right.
It depends. Look at it a little longer and it's a duck.
This is from the We Can Always Tell crowd right here.
Exactly. And even if we allow that he's right, and you can pretty much always tell with biological gender. Okay, what of?
Yeah.
I mean, biological sex. My mistake.
It happens. He's conflating sex and gender so many times, even we're getting confused.
Yeah.
About whether they are male or female. That's because biology is concrete. It's an objective reality that anyone can discern.
And
the cool thing about that, though, is that we can change it. As he's already mentioned, and as we already know, you can change your biology to match your gender identity. And that's where most trans people find their serenity, their happiness, their euphoria, if you will.
Not so with gender identity. That's a psychological belief about how you perceive yourself.
You see what I just said? Ooh, it's a psychological belief about how you perceive. Oh, God. The hand
Your
movements.
psychology is not concrete. Not only does...
So, psychology is not concrete. Again, I call bullshit on that.
yeah, because overall, like, people tend to have fairly similar, without, like, a big life event, like an attack, an accident, near death. Like, they tend to be about the same amount of outgoing most of their life. The same amount of, sorry, I totally forgot the word. They tend to have a very similar level of empathy.
Yeah.
Or, agreeableness. These things are actually pretty set in stone. I mean, they vary a little bit, but human psychology is actually not that
changeable.
Not that changeable.
It's pretty much immutable, and gender identity is much the same.
That's why we have a personality, because if you were that changeable, it wouldn't be a personality. It'd just be, how is so-and-so doing today? Not, well, she tends to be really nice and sweet, so if we ask her, she'll probably help out.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
be like, well, who knows? We'll just have to wait till it's helping day.
It doesn't change, but your perceptions can be mistaken.
Your perceptions can be mistaken, yes, but your concept of your gender is not.
That's not one of those things.
Right. And if you think it's so easy, then try being a woman and see how that goes, Mr.
No
Man.
one's that interested in deluding themselves about gender either.
No.
There may be some other things, like you might want to delude yourself about how kind you really are or how honest you really are. But your gender? I just don't see it.
I mean, and I was told, going back to my story very briefly, from a very early age, I was telling people I was a girl, they were telling people I wasn't. So I was trying to do my best to live as that. I was trying with all my strength and power to live as a boy, to live as a man, and God, how depressed was I?
You were ridiculously depressed. Like, you were literally a different person in all the best ways now.
Yeah, so, and I'm just one case, but my story has completely confirmed that gender-affirming care works, and gender-affirming care is life-saving care. Whereas this guy's like, oh, but you're wrong, and like, okay,
Based on what?
Based on boys...
Based on because I don't want you to be right, because then I couldn't come out against trans people, and then I'd be in this awkward place where I have to say either my book is wrong or I was wrong about what the book says, and I don't like that. So it's easier to just say, you were wrong and you're the problem. That's where all this circles back to.
Yeah.
Therefore, surgically altering your body based on your perception is dangerous.
I shouldn't surgically alter my boobs based on my perception that they're too big. I shouldn't surgically alter my face based on the perception that, cleft palate isn't easy to deal with.
Right.
I mean, this is just absurd.
Yeah. Truly absurd.
Permanent, life-altering effects based on fluctuating or possibly faulty.
But they're not fluctuating.
But they're not fluctuating, and they're not faulty,
If it was fluctuating, then people wouldn't be going to get the surgery because you wouldn't need it.
Yeah.
Because sure, the days where you feel like a girl would suck, but the days where you feel like a guy, and that would be fine.
Yeah. Well, and you're diving into gender fluidity there.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was going to say, well, for gender fluid people, it may be different, but yeah, in the case of the.
In the case of binary trans people like me,
That's what I was looking for.
we definitely, I definitely, want to change my body to look more feminine so that I feel more feminine, and it's making me happier all around.
Second, changing your sex is impossible. Despite claims to the contrary, gender-affirming surgery cannot make a man become a woman, or vice versa.
Again, conflating sex and gender, right? And nobody is saying that you can change your biological sex, if you want to call it that. Like, I will always have been born as a boy. I get that. And nobody is deluding themselves to the contrary. But I've also always had the gender of girl. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Consider this illustration. If a 70-year-old man gets plastic surgery to his face to make him look like he's 50 years old, does that change his actual age? Well, no.
But he's not trying to change his actual age. He's trying to change what his face looks like.
Yeah, and it's really hard to make analogies to gender, because gender is its own unique thing.
Yeah, it's really different. It's not the same thing as age.
It's not. It's not the same as age. It's not the same as race. It's not the same as literally anything else. That's why we have a different name for it. Which kind of makes this conversation more difficult to have, because it's hard to relate to other things. But
yeah.
He's trying to draw an analogy here that just doesn't work.
Because age is a biological reality that is unchangeable.
Speaking of biological realities, some biological realities are changeable. Let's just put it that way.
In the same way, if a man gets plastic surgery on his face or on his reproductive anatomy to make him look like a woman, does that change his actual sex?
No, and nobody's saying that it does.
Yeah, nobody's saying it does.
No.
This isn't even about
Because
actual,
sex, like age,
chromosome
is a biological reality that is unchangeable.
I just... if you conflate sex and gender one more time.
In fact, your body has trillions of cells that are all stamped with either XX or XY chromosomes, and nothing can change them. You cannot change your sex.
And again, no one's saying that you can't.
Gender-affirming surgery entails amputation of perfectly healthy sex organs. As I already have mentioned, there is nothing scientific about cutting off healthy and functioning organs. That is not healthcare. True medicine.
Again, we've already discussed that healthy organs there are plenty of reasons to remove healthy organs. Are you against people getting a hysterectomy because they don't, or oophorectomy because they don't want to have children?
Yeah.
And also the idea of healthy, that could be, healthy is to promote the health or well-being. And is it promoting health and well-being if it is psychologically damaging somebody?
No.
Because I would argue no, even if the tissue itself isn't mangled or cancerous or an active threat to your immediate life.
Yeah. He's making an assertion here that, the clinical data and WPATH and gender experts and all the other experts that we've mentioned just don't agree with.
Is to repair damaged organs and restore them to their original functioning state.
He's repeating
But
himself.
transitioning procedures amputate disease-free organs.
He likes that word, that thing, amputate.
Fourth,
That's some fear mongering. What if we want to be sterile for life?
Yeah,
that
plenty
isn't
of people
necessarily
do.
a bad
I don't
thing.
want to have another child. It would probably kill me, frankly.
Right.
I don't need to have another child. There's nothing actively wrong with my uterus and ovaries right now, but getting them removed could be good for my health because, again, can't have another baby.
Yeah. This slide right
people
here.
who get gender-affirming surgery don't experience a resolution of their gender dysphoria.
I'd love to see the source he's trying
Yeah,
to.
I'd
Trying to-
love to
Identify
see what he
gender
wants
often have
to.
Like, where's your source? Cite your source, because the sources I've read disagree with that.
mental health
Exactly. And
conditions.
it's not like you're ever going to stop being trans or having gender dysphoria, but it will get rid of the cause of most of the symptoms when the literal reason she comes out of the shower crying sometimes is because her anatomy does not match up.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that she'd come out of the shower crying about that if that healthy anatomy was amputated.
I'd be perfectly happy if that was amputated.
I mean, that's what I thought.
And, if anyone wants to donate to get that amputated, segue, you can check the link in the description or the link in the bio.
Such as autism, anxiety and eating disorders, or trauma as a result of childhood abuse.
Well, again, none of those things are related to gender dysphoria. They have different causes, they have different treatments. They're not analogous.
And these serious conditions are often ignored while the patient is encouraged to transition.
No,
They're
again,
not.
like, cite your source, man. It's just not true.
Yeah, saying
Yes,
stuff
people-
doesn't make it true.
People have a lot going on, and he's trying to say, oh, you're depressed. You think you're depressed because of this whole gender dysphoria thing, but really there's some underlying cause there, and you're not gonna treat the underlying cause by cutting off your wee-wee. Only he doesn't know me, and he's wrong about that.
Yeah, I mean, you may be
You're just
depressed
wrong about that, my man.
for other reasons, but no, the first thing they run to isn't like, you seem sad. Have you tried not having a dick anymore?
Right?
Like, that's not how these things work.
No, I literally tried everything else. I went through therapy for years. Didn't go through gender therapy because when I was a kid that really wasn't something that was very common at all. And we tried literally everything to tackle this depression, and turns out it was gender dysphoria.
And literally, like, hours after she came out, there was a big shift in her outlook and personality. And it's been pretty goddamn stable now for the last several years.
Yeah.
It's no wonder their gender dysphoria is unresolved with surgery. Doctors are
Well, again, it is, though, resolved with surgery.
pressured to focus on transitioning their patients to the exclusion of treating other mental health conditions.
No,
That's
that's not at all true. As a matter of fact, if you
not
have
what's
a
happening.
lot of other severe mental health diagnoses, most psychologists will not sign off on you getting gender confirmation surgery, at least until you have reached a point of being well medicated and treated for those other things. He is just saying things for literally no reason than he likes to hear his butt cheeks flap apart.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Did I miss something in the chat?
It's fine.
Okay.
Just a little bit of a... Jake is being salty about something that got pinned, and he was spamming, and I don't know. So.
Okay. Well, we can address it after, if need be.
And fifth, transgender ideation often resolves itself.
No, it
No.
doesn't.
You see, many
There's a
It
big
never
difference.
fucking resolves
and
itself.
There's a difference between actually being trans and just thinking, I wonder what it'd be like to be a boy, say if it's my case. Or there are some teens that do experiment with different gender presentation and stuff. But that's not the same thing as being trans.
Right. Exactly. So he's trying to define this experimental phase as transgender ideation, and that's not it. Yeah, a lot of kids want to be like, oh, look, I'm putting on makeup as a boy, or I am, cutting my hair as a girl, and they want to experiment with things like that, and that's totally fine, and that's valid. But if you went and not transgender ideation, that's just, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, gender fuckery, or, just changing your style.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
And that's not
plenty of
confusion
kids
about your
love
gender identity.
trying things on. Like, how many people had an emo phase for a little while in middle or high school? Or a phase where they were super into one band or a genre or something. Like, that happens, but that's not the same thing as being trans.
Did we lose connection?
I don't think so.
It's saying we lost connection to YouTube. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Huh. Weird. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's throwing me some kind of error. Hang on, chat.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what's going on here.
Okay, now it looks like it's fine. It looks like it's fine, whatever it is. Okay, so we're good. Alright, moving on.
Adolescents who experience confusion about their gender identity find that their symptoms resolve in young adulthood.
Yeah, no, they
Even
don't.
pro-transgender organizations like the American Psychological Association or the American Psychiatric Association summarize the research and acknowledge that transgender ideation fluctuates, and approximately 75% of minors who experience gender dysphoria eventually accept their chromosomal sex.
Okay, I know what study is referencing there, and that's been debunked.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd need to know the study, the parameters, and how long did they follow them? Because maybe they did, turn around and at 12 be like, yeah, maybe I am trans, and then say, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
and then 5 years later, no, they actually did turn around and transition.
No, it was a really bad study. So basically,
Fair, that's, as are most of them in the...
Yeah, so the cohort was basically like boys that liked playing with dolls or girls that liked playing with trucks.
That's not gender dysphoria.
Exactly. So it's a very bad study. And like they followed these children like, oh, this boy likes playing with dolls. The gasp. And they followed this person, and later on he didn't like playing with dolls anymore, and he was still a boy. And they're like,
was that
aha!
because he decided he didn't like playing with dolls, or was it everybody bullying him because of his choice?
A little from column A, a little from column B.
I mean, it's
but
really
in any
complicated. They weren't measuring what they said they were measuring.
Right. In any case, that little boy was never trans. He never claimed to be trans. He never thought he was a girl.
Yeah, gender dysphoria is actively proclaiming and wanting that you are a different sex or gender rather than the one you were assigned at birth, and wanting and attempting to be that other gender.
Yeah. So yeah,
and it's not something that's just like, I want to be a boy today.
Yeah.
That's not gender dysphoria.
No, it's different things. So yeah, no, he's quoting a bad study that does not say what he thinks it does.
For example, if an adolescent boy says he thinks he might be a girl, the research shows that if you don't encourage transition, by the time he reaches young adulthood,
this is simply not true.
Oh, I'm not a girl. I don't know what I was thinking. I must have been confused.
This is certainly no. That's not true. He's drawing a false conclusion based on the study, and no research has actually come out and said that people who experience gender incongruence as a teenager who don't receive treatment eventually are like, oh yeah, no, JK.
They may repress it again.
Yeah, they're probably really likely to repress it again, but yeah.
So we shouldn't be surgically altering young
and
boys
for the
and
record,
girls.
like all of the organizations, WHO and American Psychological Association, ACOG, all of those big associations don't come out in support of a treatment modality that's very likely to be completely overturned and debunked. Like, there had to be an overwhelming amount of evidence individually for each and every one of those organizations to decide to back transgender treatment. This isn't just something new that they're likely to research and disprove tomorrow. Any studies that do seem to disprove it are either need to be explored further because something weird's happening or whatever, but it's pretty much set in stone. We're getting better at treatment, but the idea that trans people need to be treated this way is not something that's just going to be brushed aside tomorrow.
When most of the time they will simply outgrow their transgender thoughts.
And what about when you're 40? Do you outgrow it then?
I didn't.
I mean, I know people are all, what about the kids? And, like, that's a hot button issue, but I've met plenty of trans people that are well past the teenager phase.
Yeah.
This is why gender-affirming care has become a serious red flag for so many people, including many non-Christians.
It's become a red flag for so many people. That's a nothing statement. That's a nothing
Yeah,
statement.
and just because it's a red flag for lay people who you've scared into hating trans people doesn't mean anything other than the effectiveness of your propaganda.
Yeah. I mean, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's bad.
She's a lesbian academic and no friend to Christianity, has said this. Anyone who collaborates in an intrusion into a developing child's body and mind is guilty of child abuse, a crime against humanity. Man.
Well, we're not doing any type of intrusion, first of all, and why are we caring what Camille Paglia has to say?
There is a whole host of atheists, evolutionists, homosexuals, and many other people who oppose this new transgender ideology. And it's mostly because they realize how unscientific and dangerous it is to people's health.
So you're just gonna say, oh yeah, all the gays hate the trans too. No, that's not how that works. Most gay people are in support of us. Actually, again, he's making statements without actually having any real evidence to back them up.
So I've shown that science falsifies both pillars of transgender theory. The sex spectrum.
He's gonna do his little animation again.
Oh my god! Oh!
There go the pillars.
He cut them both right down. Ooh, he made these strong arguments that make no goddamn sense and then was able to defeat them with the power of his ball.
How to resolve it.
Oh, there went the computer. His transphobia broke my computer, guys.
Oh, no. Well, we made it through the video.
We did. We finally made it through the video. Oh my god. That was freaking painful.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty awful. But yes, someone had asked, like, why we do this? We do this for the education.
Right.
Because we think these are bad arguments. They get made a lot, and we want to break the arguments down, both for people who may have made them, for people that don't understand the whole trans debate and are trying to be educated.
There is no trans debate.
You're just transphobic.
You're just transphobic.
Yeah, or to help people who are trans or support trans people to know what to say when these kinds of arguments are made to them.
Right. So, YouTube, thanks for watching. We will be back with episode 4 when we're able to. And as always, be true to yourself.